Hello and welcome everybody, I'm One Proper Varian, and today we're going to take a good look at what is going on in Crusader Kings III, what the conversation around the game looks like, and indeed where CK3 is headed. Because we have this right here where we even see a couple of details on what is coming in Roads to Power. This, for example, is the new start date in 1178, and this right here is the interface for the estates. We're going to talk about this later in this video. We're going to start with everything that is currently in CK3 and that is going on around CK3. And I want to warn you right now, this is not a concisely scripted video where I give you all of the exact news that you need, that you're interested in. Instead, I will be rambling a bit today because I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff to discuss and a lot of interesting stuff where I want to hear your opinion. And we can't really do this unless I expose my entire flow of thought and information to you here in the video, much like you can then do that in the comment section. We're going to talk today about the reception for Legends of the Dead, where CK3 is in general 3.5 years after release. And again, then we're also going to talk about the news, where Roads to Power is headed, what I think about it, and I would be more than interested in hearing what you are thinking about it. But that is basically what we're going to be doing today. On the 30th of April, this right here was published, some words from our game director, and it explored what happened with Legends of the Dead and what would be done about it. A bit later then, on the 8th of May, a balancing patch was released that changed a lot of things. How, for example, plagues spread, how legends stick around, and so on and so forth. It also, finally, rebalanced, for example, how much piety you would get from stuff like pilgrimages, which is really welcome. Now, in general, I think the elephant in the room, and I really love talking about this because it's so interesting to me, is the question of what the hell happened with Legends of the Dead. Legends of the Dead, as of today, is the worst rated DLC for Crusader Kings III ever released, which says a lot because, and if we take a look at it right here, people really hated the Friends or Foes, there it is, Friends and Foes DLC, I think mostly because of the house feud mechanic, but take a look at that. This DLC is rated at 35%, which is indeed slightly higher than 34%. Now, this rating is very negative, and this rating does not surprise me, although I do want to explore why that is, and I want to really appeal to you to leave your opinion, especially if you think that this DLC and this update really sucked. I would like to hear your thoughts in particular, so that I don't really lose the connection to what other people are thinking. I think that is a vital thing for me to do, but let me lay it out for you. I gave this DLC, by which I actually mean I gave this update a 9 out of 10. This is a score that I very much stand by. The way I do my review scores is not an approach or an attempt to get some objective level of this is what this is, because I don't think that can be done, and I think that is utterly useless. I know that that is kind of how we all conceive of reviews, because that is how it is done, or was done at the start of the entire kind of gaming magazine period, where they would have these meticulously crafted kind of what goes into the score, right? Technical details, then the story, then yada yada yada, and that all in all would then give a quote-unquote objective score. As much as video game magazines have moved away from this, for example, when we take a look at IGN, they have Liana Hafer, who does the stuff for, city builders, who does the stuff for GSG, and she is very clear, I think, about the fact that any opinion that she gives will also be an opinion that is her opinion. Those are not objective scores, so even gaming magazines have moved away from it, but I, in particular, never really cared for this because I don't think there is such a thing as an objective rating. My rating, the way they work, is that, or the way I want them to work anyway, if you are my player type, so if you like role-playing, if you like narratives, if you are a strategy player without a doubt, I've been playing grand strategy games starting with Hearts of Iron 2, if you are a fan of that stuff, and if you approach the games the way I do, then my review is intended to give you an impression of whether you should be playing this content right now or not. I also, and this is the caveat there that I thought about it and I will never change this, I review paid and non-paid content as one in my review. Or in my reviews in general. And I will always do this because I fundamentally believe that the update counts as a whole. I know that this isn't how people make purchasing decisions, and I think that is completely adequate. If you look at this DLC and you say this isn't worth $20 for me, most of the good stuff is in the free patch, right? I get that, but I don't think that we can actually separate these two. They come from the same cauldron, basically. And that is also something that needs to be connected to my review. Now, I personally, as I played Legends of the Dead, I had a really good time. I enjoyed the way the Legends were done. that also kind of, I think, partially comes down to the fact that I never really cared for bloodline stacking in CK2, which I think is like the wall that a lot of veteran CK2 players were hitting with this DLC, where they were basically saying, I enjoyed bloodlines way more. I really liked that way more in CK2, and this is not even scratching that itch, right? Because legends are not bloodlines, very specifically. I get that, but for me, I didn't really care about bloodlines, and I like legends. I like them with the, I will trace myself back to this historical thing. That is the origin of my dynasty. Like I said in the review itself as well, I very much did not enjoy these just kind of dissipating. Everybody forgets about them. There are no events after you complete them. Nobody remembers that your family was associated with this exact legend. And that was pretty disappointing. But in general, I really liked the effects that they gave. I in particular liked the legendary adventure, although the algorithm is very opaque in like how stuff is handed out after you migrate away. But I like that stuff. Opening up migration gameplay was also something that really comes naturally to me as well. So like I was very thankful for that possibility there, basically coming from the feature Legends. Now Plagues, I liked. I still like to this day. I think honestly this... I know many people will disagree with this again, but like... I think they're kind of too weak now. I was doing, as the Manor Lord's content was going up, to decompress, I was doing CK3 campaigns. I was doing one in Pomerania, and then I was doing one in Iran as Armenia, so not really in Iran, but as Armenia. And I was playing those off camera, and I was playing them basically whenever, you know, I wanted to play a game that wouldn't go up on the channel. And I feel like now after this 8th of May patch where they rebalanced a bunch of stuff, Plagues are like so rare, it's like they barely impact me, but at the time of the release, there definitely were a lot more Plagues out there, I think, and I also think, yeah, there definitely was a lot of event spam, but for me, that's something I can easily overlook. I know other people can't. Now, the important thing about Plagues, though, was that, I don't know when they did it, I don't remember this exactly, but a while ago, CK3's team said, okay, we hear you, game's too easy, we want to do something about it, and they implemented something called the kind of like accidental death stuff, right? Oh my god, I hate that stuff. I hate that stuff so much. It's unreal how much I hate it. Getting some nonsense event that just says, you're dead. What do you want me to do? You're dead, kid. With no context, with no backup, I turned that off immediately. For me, that was just CK2's chess with death event, but like 15 times over. I hated it. I hated it so much. And I think the community didn't really love it either, but I think I hated it way more than the rest of the community. Plagues, since they are rooted in the map, since they have a context, since I can interact with them, since I can deal with them, since I can sacrifice certain stats, like, hey, I'm gonna seclude myself. I like dying to a plague, because it feels like I can see and influence a cause and effect. I really, really enjoyed Plagues. The other element of it is that a lot of people, and I think that's mostly people that didn't buy the DLC, at least from what I hear, didn't like legitimacy in its current implementation. I love legitimacy. I in particular love legitimacy when it is low and I have to deal with this. Basically, a very consistent issue that I have and that we had in the roleplay series for Basconiaco as well, was that at a certain point, your heir can be terrible, can be awful, it doesn't matter. Everybody's gonna love you because everybody looks at the dynasty and goes, oh yes, I love you, good chap. I hated that stuff. Legitimacy is kind of a counter to this. I do think that like there was definitely some unbalance. There is still some unbalanced stuff to legitimacy, but this is, I love that concept and I love even the implementation of it. So that is why I was like, if you play the game like me, probably gonna have a really good time with this. 9 out of 10. Like I say, I stand by that quote, or by that result, I guess. But obviously, a lot of people did not have a great time with this, right? And so before we continue, I would just like to say that even if you, or especially if you are a role player, first and foremost, let me know why you hated this DLC so much, right? Like, the very specific nature of your personal gripe is something I would like to learn about. Because obviously, again, for me, it's like, I clearly have a player archetype. Whether it aligns with many other players, that's to be seen, right? That's a different topic. But I would like to know what other role players, like how they stand to this. I will say, for example, just to clear up my review scores, and I should have done this actually like a long time ago for like as a general info video, how do my reviews work? I do reviews again as this subjective thing, and whether you should enjoy this, or whether you will enjoy this, I mean, if you are my player type. And basically a 9 and a 10 out of 10. A 10 out of 10 in my system is very viable if I exclusively have a good time. And the 10 out of 10 would then signal, you gotta play this right now. Like, listen, if you have the same fun as I do, this is something you're gonna have a great time. this should definitely take priority in your next play goals, right? Your playing habits. Like a 7 out of 10 is like, okay, yeah, this is good. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna have a decent time, a good time. But if you get like better stuff lying around, like really good stuff, then go play that first. This is not really that urgent. A 5 out of 10 is like, okay, yeah, it's like, you're gonna have an okay time. It's gonna be a good time, you know? 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10 is like, you really want to play this? It's like, you're probably gonna enjoy some elements, but like, you really want to play that though? That's basically where I'm coming from there on my rating system, right? So that's what the 9 out of 10 is meant to say. It's not trying to say this is flawless. It very specifically goes for the subjective rating and then says, if you are my player type, this is what this enjoyment would probably be for you. Again, which is why it's so important for me to see people that have similar play types to mine and see what their criticisms were. Because then I can correct into that direction. I want to keep making those reviews. I enjoy making those reviews much more. I think they're much more meaningful than trying to assign somewhat, if at all, objective rating to a game. Yeah, and I'm also not gonna divide paid and unpaid content. Like I said, for me, it's like comes out of one cauldron. You can't really differentiate that. It does not work that way. Be it functionally or be it update-wise. We're gonna come back to that because the game director also, of course, talked about this. Alexander Oldner talked about this in that post. Anyway, so that is my rating. Now, for me, a question that has come up, and I think it's a very justified question. I don't think the community is wrong in this context. Don't get me wrong before we even get into this. Can a CK3 DLC, as things are, in the public community feedback, ever go higher than like 80%? 85%, even like 75%. Let me grab this, right? We got, I think the most unanimously positive DLC, Northern Lords mixed, yeah, look at that, Royal Court mixed, Fate of Iberia mixed, Friends and Foes mostly negative, Tours and Tournaments, we're gonna get to that in a second, mixed, and mixed. Mostly negative, my bad, not mixed. Tours and Tournaments is a great DLC. There are certainly elements that are critical. I mean, I did a review on this, don't need to go into that. 77%. This is the best DLC rating that CK3 has been able to achieve. Does this appeal to everybody? Surely not. It's not unjustified to be negative about a particular DLC. But my point is, when we take a look at this, I feel like a lot of the negativity that is coming at upcoming DLCs and upcoming updates stems from something that is bigger than those DLCs. And I want to stress here, I'm not saying to discredit or devalue that attitude, right? But I would like to highlight it because it's an interesting thing to discuss. What I mean here is, this game releases, what was it, the 7th of September, the 1st of September 2020. You get Northern Lords, sorry, no, it is Northern Lords. I thought I said the Old Guards. You get Northern Lords, I don't even remember, I think it was like January 2021, and then nothing until February 2022. The reasons for which we've explored a lot on the channel, that the community has talked about a lot, but that's a long time. 2 years have passed. You have one expansion, you have the very first expansion pass out at that point. Then you get Fate of Iberia and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves in 2024. And just off the top of my dome, Cardinals, Anti-Popes, Trade, Nomads, better tribal gameplay, maybe modular governments, merchant republics, trades, illness. Okay, illness is out, sorry. Maybe a map expansion, old world, right? Societies, more interesting council gameplay. Just off the top of my dome. After 3.5 years, soon 4 years, we are at a point where I think all of us can name 1, 2, maybe 3 topics that they really want in the game, but they now slowly realize will not be in the game until the game was out for 7 or 8 years. And I feel like that reality setting in is something that will make it so that no matter what the CK3 team does, it will swing with into the review score. And I want to be very cautious about this. So I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that to say you shouldn't be rating these so negatively. It is Paradox's business. It is Paradox's obligation to make it so that you like what they sell. If there are compounding factors that make it so that you don't like what they sell, it is on them to clear that up. That has to be clarified. If the community, and I mean again, I love trade. I love trade so much. I've read so many papers on medieval trade. I want trade so bad, man. If it's not coming next year, so like if Roads to Power comes out and trade isn't in the next expansion pass, that means we're looking at 2026 for trade. Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna die. So I hope that you see that I feel your pain, right? I want to point this out though, because the actual quality of the mechanics still is a separate topic from these concerns, right? It's a valid element in your judgment, whether you think, you know where you're coming from there, that Paradox has to tackle if they can. But I want to bring this up to inquire, does that swing in your opinion? So like, I got a feeling that that is something that is like an underlying current that is there now and has been there ever since. I mean, there's been so much negative press just to summarize for CK3 alone, you got the COVID delays, you got the price increases, you have this shifting stuff around between expansion passes, right? Ultimately, it's kind of like McDonald's, where McDonald's raises prices, but they don't actually raise them. It's just, if you commit to installing their app, which makes you statistically more likely to show up in McDonald's, you can get the original prices, right? That's like how they've done it. And I feel like it's very similar here with the expansion passes, where they're basically saying, you can have the old prices, but you have to commit to the full thing. Which, for them, obviously, is a huge boon. I talked about this ages ago now, that the Paradox business model today is still a long-term DLC business model, but it's actually different, because the initial buy-in price is infinitely higher than it used to be. I talked about this in the context of Victoria 3. But I think it's true for all grand strategy games of Paradox that have this kind of expansion pass stuff going on. So yeah, I mostly want to know, to put this section of the rambling to an end, how much does the question, I really wish this was my dream feature though, how much does that impact, now 3.5 years into CK3, how you feel about mechanics and DLC and so on? Because I got a feeling, and maybe I'm wrong with this, that is like significantly impacting it. I think Legends of the Dead, even if you're not my player archetype, is not a 34% positive DLC. But it is, with an underlying current in mind. Now, obviously, this underlying current goes much, much further than just what has happened with CK3, where CK3 stands on a content level after 3.5 years. It goes all into Paradox as a whole, as a company, right? There's a lot going on there. Too much to go into in this video, because then I will never stop rambling. Got a lot of thoughts on a lot of things. But yeah, that's something that I kept in mind, because for me, it's kind of like, I feel like the mood in the community for CK3, in the core community, just has soured. And I don't think that it can be regained anytime soon. Even if you make the perfect DLC, I don't think that DLC is going to be rated over 80%. I just don't think so. Because everybody would look at that DLC and go, okay, yeah, that's great. But where's my mechanic that I wanted? We have 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in now. Where's my mechanic, right? I feel like that is going to be a tone that will stick to CK3 going forward. Now, I do want to say, even if that means people think I just rate CK3 content positively, I will also, going forward, much like I did with Legends of the Dead, I have a huge frustration in this current underlying current with trade. I want trade in the game 3 years ago, okay? But I will still divorce that from my reviews, because I specifically, like I mentioned, want those reviews to be connected to how I think a player archetype is likely to enjoy that delivered content. That's just for the record. I will keep doing the reviews the way they are, because that's the point of the reviews. I would have, for example, the Iranian Intermezzo, I would have given it maybe a 6 out of 10. So 6 out of 10 is like, it's good. But if you got better games lying around that you enjoy more, go play those. You're not going to be missing out on too much. That's in my rating system again, which isn't, it's more like just like how much will you enjoy this, and should you play this immediately, yes or no? Yeah, Legacy of Persia right here, you can see this DLC here. It is roughly at 59%, so it kind of happens to align with the score that I would have given it had I reviewed it. It essentially comes down to the fact that I was playing it and I never really had a bad time, but at all times I just went, the text jurisdiction, it's so clunky, it's so annoying. I will look at this once and then never again. Very similar basically to the acclaimed knights, I think, in many ways actually. When I look at, for example, the struggle, I really do not like the idea that it's only active in 867. I feel like I'm getting half the bang for the buck there. But maybe more importantly, I think the struggle is a really interesting twist, a really interesting idea on struggles where you say, okay, A, you have two different groups of supporters. That makes it really interesting. You have some clear opponent in front of you, which decidedly is the opposite situation for Iberia. And then at the same time, you also have a struggle that can close out. It can just end itself. Now, these are cool ideas, and I really appreciate the thought put into this, but as I was playing it, it's just, if I play Hastine, and I do something, I don't know, I migrate to Germany, and then, you know, I want to migrate again 200 years later. If I go to Iberia, there will be a struggle there will be something to do, it will be interesting. If I go to Iran, nothing is there. It's already closed out, there's nothing interesting going on. It kind of sucks. If I play in Iran, I have to very specifically choose a very particular playstyle so that I can achieve my struggle ending. If I don't do that, it's just gonna, you know, close out on its own. I don't love that. I do not like that at all. I think it's a net negative. Again, I had a good time with this DLC as well, which is why I land roughly on like 6 out of 10 somewhere anywhere. But I wouldn't recommend it like with the urgency of you need to play this right now, because for that, yeah, there were just too many elements where as a role player I said, yeah, no, I can't really, you know, hey, you do this once and then you've pigeonholed yourself enough that you don't want to do it again. When I was playing Armenia, as previously mentioned, I had a really good time, but yeah, I really wish the struggle kind of got a different direction there. I understand, obviously, this was an experiment, didn't really pan out, but that's where I would have landed there when it comes to that. And, well, again, it happened to align with this, but that's not really what I go after anyway. Now, that settles where we're standing there. I want your full opinions on all of that, but now we get to the other topics indeed. They have a bunch of stuff that they want to bring in to make the game more interesting in the patch for Roads to Power. For example, right here, you can choose a different destiny, a different heir. You can also mark actually somebody from what we know as, you know, always needing to pop up here. You can see right here, this guy, I think this is the button. Nope, that is not the button. There you go. This guy, I believe, is landless. This looks like an adventure symbol to me, if you ask me. I don't think it says anyone there. Experience as a wise man. What the hell does that even mean? Anyway, yeah, so you can now choose this stuff, or this is the goal to make it more interesting. I always enjoyed Inheritance, which is a mod by Stick. Really good mod. You should check it out if you want some variation in the playthroughs as well, so this is definitely a good change. Then right here we have Conqueror stuff, where basically sometimes characters will emerge that will be very powerful and just go around and conquer stuff. I think that is nice. I am worried about balancing and all that stuff, but I find it interesting either way. I think it's a pretty cool idea there. To make gameplay more interesting, you just say, okay, every now and again, people will consolidate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. It's basically cheating for the AI, but yeah, okay, if you want challenge, that is probably a nice way, and it just makes it more interesting to look at the map. Now, beyond that, of course, we are also taking a look at what is coming in Roads to Power, the big upcoming major expansion that could have a ton of pitfalls. Let's take a quick look at what that looks like. On Steam right here, Roads to Power discusses specifically what will be in it. There will be the administrative government, the family estate. We got some screenshot for that, not here, but in the post right there. We're going to take a look at that as well, of course. Then we got the life of adventures, so you can supposedly now be landless, which is pretty wild because it has never been done before, and that also makes me very worried. Other than that, we have an influence system. Not really enough information to think about that too much. New imperial management, run a sprawling imperial bureaucracy, appointing and directing the governors of your provinces. Sounds much like CK2. Then we got choose successor or Caesar, new Byzantine flavor content, and cosmetic additions. I want to talk specifically about my concerns for the mechanical side of things. Why don't we start with the upcoming start date? This is 1178. 1178 is pretty interesting. You got the Kingdom of Jerusalem, you got Saladin, you got Lionheart, you got Barbarossa, you got that French king, what's his name? Philippe, something like that, right? You have a lot of stuff happening. The Black Death is about to roll over the world. You have the Mongols about to come along as well. It sounds great, and I'm also super worried. I am super worried because of the general balancing. I'll be honest with you. I think late game balancing for CK3 is in an awful state. Has been since forever, because everything just compounds to have bigger numbers, and the wider the variation in numbers is that you can have, the bigger, the worse will balancing be. I am absolutely certain, that the patch that we're gonna get, I'm just gonna like say this right away, I would be surprised if 1178, I would be surprised by this more than by anything else could ever surprise me. I think 1178 will be a balancing mess, okay? Because, so I've played mods that have these kind of late start dates, and everybody's swimming in money, everybody is in a position where resources are aplenty, you will never worry about any of this, and all the challenge is trivialized. It will come down to you going through the motions of doing a war, eviscerating people with the massive stacks of men-at-arms that you have. If they change something drastically here, where they go, okay, you know what, actually, in the late game of CK3, instead of having 50 units of men-at-arms, because we're crazy, you will still only have 5, but they will have better quality, unless they do something like this, right? Where they then have numbers that they can manage more, where it's easier to balance those numbers, where they say, okay, these 5 units, you know, it's much easier to see through what is happening here. Unless they do something radical like this, which I don't think they will, I think this is going to be a huge, hot mess. You cannot balance, for something like this, the resource abundance. We're looking at massive increases of income there, just statistically stemming from the building levels that go above and beyond, basically, at that point. What I would be hoping for would basically that you make 10 bucks if you're making good money in 1066, and you're making 10 bucks in 1300 as well. But those 10 bucks in 1300 can buy you way cooler stuff. If they balance it like that, I think you can see a resembling of balance. I don't know whether I can bring it across, but basically the issue is, as soon as you like, I make 100 bucks a month, you're not balancing any of this. It's not happening. The difference, the dissonance between big and small characters, big and small realms will be so significant. It will be so insane. I don't think you can balance that right. I'm excited for this start date, but I also think, having played mods that, with the current balancing, are in this late of the game a period, they're not really made for replayability, I think. Yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this. I'm very concerned about this. I'm not that interested in this start date because of that reason. I think when this comes out, it will be a huge mess balancing-wise. Then down here, we have the question of estates, and I find this really interesting. We had estates in CK2 already, with the family estates for the merchants, right? So the merchant republics. I don't think Imperial gameplay had any type of estate. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure they don't. Now, these estates could be interesting. Right now, when we take a look at this, what do we see? Well, we see a pretty standard thing, right? You have different building slots. You have this right here. You have an upgrade path. I actually really like the idea of you needing to make a choice for one particular building at some point. Quite interesting. But in general, this just feels like a money sink. What interests me in this a lot is whether this will actually make it good and interesting and fun to kind of be a governor and then just lose your governorate and you just retreat here. I wonder, can we do stuff from our family estate? Is there enough to do inside of our family to make it interesting? How hard, how easy will it be to return from a family estate onto the stage? Can I become emperor from here if I have the resources? That kind of stuff. That is what I'm interested in. The fundamental thing that we're seeing right here seems like a money dump, which isn't bad. We need more money dumps, right? But in general, I wonder whether this would be good enough to basically incentivize sometimes just being a courtier, sometimes just, you know, not holding anything. From how I understand it, these family estates will be only for stuff going on in the Byzantine Empire, so when it comes to the administrative government. But I think in general, if they manage to make it so that it is interesting enough that you can do enough stuff from this right here, so from your estate, then I can believe that merchant republics might be more fun than they were in CK2, that maybe even China could be something that eventually, maybe in like 2027, 2028, could be on the menu for CK3 and be fun, right, with the estates. Obviously, landless gameplay is I'm the biggest landless gameplay hater, okay? So that is, we don't have any screenshots for that. Okay, we don't have any information on landless gameplay beyond what we have right here. And let me actually, sorry, this is Legends of the Dead. We don't have any gifts here. We got nothing. We just have this. Freely roam the map. United, untied to any realm or holding, going where the winds of fortune blow you. Fulfill contracts as a landless adventurer, even through the generations. Building up a reputation of your own. Earn gold, prestige, and fame traveling the globe until you decide to settle down and claim a land that you have earned through merit. This sounds like the perfect player fantasy. And I think a lot of people will see this much more positively than I am seeing it. I hated the Rise to Power mod for CK2. I am very afraid that landless gameplay here is just going to be all about you pressing buttons until you get land. I fear that will be the case. In which case I will be like, okay, that sucks. That's, you know, I really hate that. I did not like Rise to Power. I know it was a fan favorite. I know many people played it. I remember this. I was doing YouTube content at the time. I never covered it because I just didn't have fun with it. I hated it. And I think chances are good that unless they do something really miraculous, which I would be really interested in, I don't think I will enjoy this. So in general, let me phrase it this way. I think Roads to Power has the chance to be seen quite positively by the community. I think I will be pretty not positive about it. Primarily based on, you know, the idea of landless gameplay, based on the idea that I would rather have trade, and based on the idea that when it comes to administrative gameplay, I'm already kind of disappointed. Not as disappointed as I am in Power Blocks and Victoria 3, but that's a separate video. I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that this is a government specific to the Byzantines. I was always under the impression that government types eventually would see a general revamp, instead of being kind of sectioned off into completely separate twigs. We already have this now with the clan government. You will never have tax jurisdictions in feudal governments. You will never have contracts in as a main thing for clans. If we get an administrative government that is completely isolated as well, then I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. We're looking at a situation of, oh, and my god, you know what? I'm going to finish this video rambling like I started it, okay? If we get an administrative government that has no intention to ever be kind of translucent towards other governments and vice versa, that isn't modular at all, I will be sad. I will be disappointed. Which also, for the record, was the one big thing. I was like, okay, I get it. In 2020, right? You ripped out Imperial government because CK2 sucked. It was really bad. Everybody hated Imperial succession. I hated it so much. It really sucked. If you've played it, you will know why. You're going to implement it better, right? Now, my idea for government types was they're going to be pretty modular. You can have some type of republican characteristics in your feudal empire. This can be a thing. It's not mutually exclusive. These are naturally grown traditions of a legal variety, right? And now they're re-implementing them and they're all kind of segregated. It's like, wow, I don't like that. A very similar case, and this actually soured me significantly on the Iranian Intermezzo, okay? They brought, and this wasn't even listed anywhere as a feature. I had to find out about this just by looking around. I was just like investigating this and found it by accident. They brought back secret faiths in CK3 with Legacy of Persia. And it was worse than in CK2. Because in CK2, at the very least, you could found your own cult, you could spread it. It was more interesting. In CK3, it shouldn't be in. I'll be honest with you. I think the way it is right now, that I was like, oh my god. How can that make it back into the game with so little functionality? It's like it just exists so that you can get blackmailed. I hated that feature. Sadly, never got to bring that up because I just didn't find the time to do a review at the time. I liked a lot about Legacy of Persia. I think the art, you know, like a lot of the flavor, it's so amazing. The buildings they added, really cool stuff. But my god, I really, that soured me because I was like, I understood in 2020 why you ripped out secret faiths. You wanted to do something once you had a better version of societies. That's my impression, right? And then it comes in like a worse version. I'm like, I sure hope that the Byzantine stuff won't be like that. You know, that's like my personal Vietnam, where I'm like, ooh, let's hope that doesn't come out that way. Anyway, listen, a lot of rambling. I am hopeful for Roads to Power. I am quite intrigued by what we've seen of the estates. I hope that will make it interesting to maybe sometimes not hold any land at all. I hope that it's going to be interesting in general. I like many of the changes they are doing there. I'm very skeptical but open to be surprised when it comes to landless gameplay, mostly because I was so negative about Rise to Power back in CK2. Did not like it at all. I mean, it's a great effort by a modder, don't get me wrong there, but gameplay-wise, I just did not like it. Let's see what they do there, but I'm skeptical when it comes to landless gameplay, probably much more skeptical than the average player. And that's all the news for CK3 right now. I mostly want to use this video, obviously, for like a bit of a community get-together, talking about where we each stand on all of the topics that we've discussed here today. You know, it can be kind of weird to make these free talk videos, because there's so much that I want to talk about. There's so many thoughts that I have that I mostly only really share on the Discord, because they just never have the time to make it into a video. It's nice to have that kind of stuff in a video every now and again. So That's why we were here today. Let me know what you think about everything. Otherwise, I will force you to unsubscribe from me. And yeah, hey, listen, let me know your opinions on all of that stuff. I love to see them because this is a lived community, and we'll see each other in 2029 when we finally get trade. God, I hope we're gonna get trade next year. I hope it's so much. Anyway, I will leave you right here, and I'll see you later, alligator.